Good evening, everyone, and welcome to night 4 of the College Information Week. And we've got a special guest for you. It's my pleasure to welcome once again to our College Information Week family, Mr. Robert Alexander. Rob is the Vice President and University Dean of Enrollment at the University of Rochester, where he's worked since 2020. Prior to his time there, Rob worked at Millsaps College, the University of the Pacific, and Tulane University. Rob, thank you for joining us. This session is about holistic admissions, a phrase that's used a lot these days and kind of thrown around. I'm going to turn things over to you, but can you tell our audience what that term means and how it impacts your process at the University of Rochester?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me, John. I'll start by saying what holistic admissions is not. It is not admissions that is making decisions about students using a computer algorithm to automatically triangulate between some kind of recalculated GPA and test score. And frankly, that is how some very large schools, particularly large public institutions, have had to do business for a very long time. If there's anything positive coming out of the recent Supreme Court decision on affirmative action, it's that now many more schools are really interested in pursuing a holistic admission model that is not based on simple numerical metrics and really considers the whole student. That's the whole in holistic. Everything from what that student has achieved, and in school, out of school, but also the context from which they come. So you asked about holistic admissions at the University of Rochester, and let me be just really transparent here and tell you how it works. Every admission application at the University of Rochester is reviewed twice by two independent readers. The first reader's job is to really understand the student within the context from which they're coming, to understand their school. We can talk more about that later, how admissions committees and readers understand and become familiar with even a school from which they don't see applications every single year, or 20 to 30 applications like sometimes we see from McQuaid. But also not just the school, the student's community, the student's family, the student's opportunities given the context from which they're coming. So independently from that, the second reader at Rochester is going to try to assess who would the student be in the context of the University of Rochester's first year class. So what would that student bring into our community, and how would they represent and fulfill all of the different goals that we have when we are crafting a class? So the last thing I'll say is that no institution is looking for automatons who are all going to be exactly the same in their first year classes. So at Rochester, for example, we're not looking for 1,450 perfect students. We are looking for 1,450 very different, very imperfect individuals who are going to round out the class and create a really interesting mix of students on every floor in our first year residence halls, in every classroom on campus, and in every extracurricular and co-curricular activity on campus.
Rob, that was a great description. And you, especially when you're talking about that second reader who has to assess the fit at Rochester and see what they might bring. You've got, I see it all over the place, Meliora. I see how does your mission, how does that fit into the analysis that you do and the decisions that you make?
Well, John, I'll start out by saying that I am the product of a high caliber Jesuit boys high school education. And if there's any community that should understand the importance of institutional values and mission, it's our McQuaid families, right? I understand that context very much. And while the University of Rochester, for example, is not a Jesuit school, it's not a Catholic school, it's not affiliated and didn't come out of any particular religious tradition, it is a school that is really rooted in its values. And this idea of Meliora, which all of the boys listening will know is Latin for ever better, means that we're not looking for perfection. We are looking for what's now colloquially called a growth mindset. students that understand that striving to be the best is an approach that focuses on an endpoint, but in fact, in the lives that we are trying to lead, there is no endpoint. There is continuous improvement, constant betterment, not just for the sake of oneself, but by making oneself better, we're also making those around us better. We're improving our communities. And ultimately, what we are striving for at the University of Rochester as an institution is making a difference in the world.
That's a perfect answer, especially for a place like us where we are very mission driven. Tell me, what are there certain tools you use to assess that? Are there certain parts of the application or questions that you ask that help you see that fit?
So holistic admissions, again, means we're looking at everything. But the first part of assessing a college applicant is, of course, academic potential. That means academic achievement, but also that contextual piece of maybe they haven't achieved everything that they're capable of. And how can we assess that idea of potential from what the student tells us about, gosh, I had a really tough math teacher junior year, and my math grade doesn't show you my actual math competency, and I've got more potential there, to what we hear from recommenders. So from high school, college counselors like you, from teachers who know students well, maybe from parish priests or athletic coaches, they can really speak to that idea of potential. And not just what did this student achieve, but what did this student do when they met an obstacle? Did they give up? Or did they feel that impact of that challenge and demonstrate some perseverance? Did they utilize the resources that are available to them at a place like McQuaid or within their own family to ask for help? And I think it's really important that parents especially know that admissions committees at selective universities are looking for vulnerability in students' application, not perfection. We want to hear about what students have done when met with significant challenge or adversity, because we're pretty sure they're going to meet some adversity on our campuses. And we want students that's not going to be their first time and can demonstrate some resilience. That doesn't mean that the student has to have, cured cancer or been to the moon and back already. But in ways that were meaningful and personal to the student, usually coming through in essays and recommendation. How did they rebalance themselves when things got shaky? And can they leave us feeling assured that they'll be able to do that in the future?
On that note, Rob, you gave me a real smooth segue to a question about teacher recommendations. I think a lot of our students are looking very quickly at their transcript and seeing who gave them the best grade and thinking that this is the right person to ask for a recommendation. But I think there are cases where that may not be true. Do you have thoughts about who are the right teachers to be going after for recommendations?
Certainly. Well, I want to recognize that I understand that impulse. And we are looking for students who've achieved a degree of success. And it may be that teacher is a perfect candidate to write on behalf of that student. But we're also looking for multiple perspectives and vantage points. So it could be that if it's a class where the student didn't have to do much to achieve that, really high grade, maybe that's not the person who will write the best recommendation. I think the best recommendations come from the folks who know the student best, irrespective of the grade in that class. And there can be a tremendous benefit from a teacher who's able to write about the grit, the hard work, the resilience that a student demonstrated in having to maybe overcome one of their weaknesses. So it doesn't have to be someone who teaches in the academic area that the student is expressing an interest in majoring in college. It really is someone who can provide the best narrative for that student and perhaps present a different dimension of the student from what the student is talking about in his own essay, so that we can triangulate, right? Part of the reader's job is to understand from as many different perspectives as possible who is this student in all of their multifaceted excellence.
That's perfect. You mentioned it earlier, but I think it's worth having you expound on a little bit, is the role of McQuaid, of where students went to high school and how that factors into how their application is reviewed.
Well, don't put this in the Democrat and Chronicle, but the McQuaid students have already won the college admissions lottery. They have you. They have one of the best college counseling teams in the country with deep knowledge and experience, insights, and real relationships with the students. I know that to be true of the teachers at McQuaid as well. And that is such an advantage and so different than what happens at far too many, particularly large public high schools across the country. So again, the families that are listening to this, you have experts who will guide you through this process. And if you heed their advice, I think the college admission process can be a wonderful experience for a family to grow together and flow into the next phase of their relationship as parents and child, and really see their young man come into his own and really feel reassured that the investment you've made in McQuaid has, along with great parenting, I'm sure, made these young men ready to become adults off on their own and succeed in college and beyond.
Thanks for the plug there, Rob. I appreciate it. Tell me a little bit about how I think students sometimes view holistic admissions as looking at things like athletic abilities, musical abilities, special talents that might fall outside of a traditional transcript, playing a role in the decision-making process. How do those special talents play a role for you?
So I'll say that across 80 to 90% of applicant pools, we don't really care about what a student did. We don't care about how they spent their time. We care about what they learned from how they spent their time. And COVID was a great example of this, where students who expected that they would have certain leadership roles on teams or in orchestras as high school seniors maybe didn't have those opportunities, right? And they were left to do other things, but still share with the colleges they applied to how whatever they were doing with their time was meaningful to them, how they were able to learn and grow from those experiences. So that's by and large what we're looking for. Now, for the other 10 to 20%, absolutely. There are institutions, and Rochester is no exception. When we need a soccer goalie, we need a soccer goalie because we've got to field a great soccer team next year. So there are those niche holes that we need to fill at any given institution. Sometimes students, even counselors, can't know what those holes are going to be. Sometimes coaches do know, right? Because high school coaches are in touch with college coaches and may have a sense of, hey, this school is going to lose their star goalie who's a senior and is going to graduate and move on. So you'd be, a really great fit at that institution because they're going to need that position filled. What we are looking for is leadership. What we are looking for is dedication. But we are also realistic that not every student is going to have the athletic prowess to be the captain of a varsity team. We know that not every student is going to have the flexibility to spend their time after school doing all the wonderful co-curricular activities that McQuaid offers, because they've got to help mom and dad run their small business, to sit and run credit cards at the restaurant while they're doing their homework at night. So colleges are very realistic about that. But what we need students to do is be reflective about those experiences, whether it's in their main college essays, whether it's in response to short answer questions, maybe even in what traditionally would be a resume, getting beyond just what did I do, how many hours a week did I spend on it, but including, a sentence or a bullet about how did this reinforce my trajectory about what I want to do in life? How did this allow me to grow and learn? How did this allow me to interact with grown-ups in a different way than I would have otherwise? Those are the kinds of things that really matter. In college admissions, we don't necessarily care as much about the who, what, where, and when. We really care about the why. Why was that time you spent doing whatever meaningful to you? And how is it going to become meaningful and impactful on our campus community if you come and join us?
That's really important. Give me a sense, shifting to the academic world for a minute. We're hearing a lot about students who are trying to specialize academically early on. In other words, they know they want to go off and be the next CEO of a Fortune 500 company. So let me take business classes, perhaps to the exclusion of other things. Do you have thoughts about what type of a curriculum a student should be choosing, especially because these are juniors? Most of the people watching will be juniors who are about to be making those selections for their senior year program.
My encouragement is that no student should pursue a specialty if it comes at the cost of ignoring the baseline college level preparation that McQuaid provides. So I'm not going to be able to give as expert and as specific advice as you, the counseling staff there, who know these students, who understand the menu of options available at McQuaid in a really deep and profound way. So take their advice, but ultimately, I'll answer this question by shifting and telling you what I hear from deans of admission at the most selective med schools in the country. They say, we don't want undergraduates who've already taken anatomy. We'll teach them anatomy. We want undergraduates who've excelled in their pre-med coursework, generally, but also who took the opportunity during their undergraduate years to understand the human condition and pursue some passion outside of the hard sciences and understand humanity a little bit so that someday they'll actually be treating patients as humans rather than just as cells and tissues. I think that same advice applies for selective college admissions in thinking about the broad level of preparation that we want to see from high school students, because the truth is 80% of college students end up switching their major at least once during their undergraduate career. So what students think they might want to do might change multiple times during their college career. So that broad preparation to be a solid academic student is going to be most important when colleges are evaluating applicants.
It's like, me, Rob, that I walked into college thinking I was going to be a doctor, and look at how things shifted and changed. And that's it. To have a preparation so that you can make those shifts is really vital and critical.
You and me both. And while I'm glad I have the prefix doctor before the title, we're all glad that it has nothing to do with treating patients.
Yes, absolutely. I am too, for myself, and no question about it. Tell me if you. One of the things that I think students, it's a misconception about holistic admissions is that people think that poor grades can then be overcome by other factors and other elements. What would you say to these juniors who are in the middle of their junior year working hard and need to continue to do so?
I would say that college admissions is primarily an academic competition, and there is no substitute for the baseline expectation that we have that we need students who will academically succeed on our campuses. And there is nothing else that is compensatory for that, unless maybe we're talking about somebody who's already got NFL or NBA potential.
Sure. So there's one element of the application that we haven't discussed much here, and I'd love to get your thoughts on the role of the personal statement, the essay. I know our students spend a lot of time, especially over the summer, preparing for that, and then as school starts, it becomes the hot topic. And I've done my fair share of reviewing essays at this moment. But I'd be interested in your thoughts about what role it plays in the ultimate decision that gets made.
Well, the essay can be very important. Again, not as important as the baseline academic assessment, but ultimately, the essay is the one, maybe there's an interview component as well at some institutions, but at the baseline, the essay is the one time that a student can share their voice directly with anyone who is reading that application file. So the topic is less important than how the applicant expresses himself. Don't write an essay about something you think sounds impressive or that you think the admissions officer wants to read about. I think while it's fine to look at college application essay examples, don't simply mimic the ones that you think are the best. This is one where we actually changed our attestation at the end of the application to include that students will say, I didn't have ChatGPT or another AI algorithm write my essay for me. Why? Not because we don't think it's a useful tool. I think you could absolutely, run some drafts of your essay through an AI and ask it, what are the big takeaways that a college admissions committee would come away after reading this. But this is the time where we want the student's authentic voice to come through. So again, be brief in explaining who, what, and where. Leave plenty of room for the whys and the hows. And I think ask yourself, could everyone else in my senior class have written this essay? Or does it truly reflect only me? Essays usually work well as narratives. And narratives are stories with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Narratives work well when they hook the reader with a compelling open paragraph that surprises us, that teaches us something we didn't know, or shares something that's vulnerable and makes us curious to read more. But good narratives also close with a clear ending that ties back to the opening, provides a captivating conclusion to the story. So it's a good idea to have somebody else, like your college counselor, review your essay. But again, be careful that they're not offering so much feedback that it's losing your authentic voice.
You're setting me up. And students, you'll hear me say this over and over and over and over again. Most admissions officers will read thousands of these over the year, and to have a strong opening sentence, to have a paragraph that hooks the reader, goes a long way into making your essay a success. And that's just good English skills that a lot of people here will reinforce with you. But thank you for saying that, Mr. Alexander. I appreciate it. Let me turn perhaps to a different topic, but one that's relevant given what we're discussing. I've met with several parents at this point. They are nervous for their sons. They're anxious about this process and what it may mean. What advice do you have for parents as they're beginning this process?
Yeah, I understand the anxiety. I want to reiterate, you all have won the college admissions lottery. Your students are going to go somewhere amazing. In fact, they're going to have multiple amazing opportunities at different colleges. And they might be colleges that were not on your list, parents, when you were going through high school. Indeed, those top 30, 40 schools have become even more hyper selective than they were. But I'll also tell you that the next 30 or 40 institutions that maybe you parents who went to college weren't considering a generation ago, those places have become really, really good. And there are amazing opportunities for McQuaid students at some of those places. Don't dismiss places you've never heard of or in far off locations, or your students who are interested in a collegiate experience abroad. I think the way you can help the most is really by being the support system for your student. Your students have the expertise in their college counselors at McQuaid, so they don't need your college guidance. They need your emotional guidance and support. So I say that parents work best as the pit crew, but the students are really the driver of the car, and the counselor is the one in their ear providing the navigation and the direction about the landscape ahead. Keep in mind how you communicate. What might feel like a reasonable suggestion from you could be interpreted by your anxious students as an attempt to take over the process. This is a really exciting time for them, but they're also nervous. In modern American society, we don't have coming of age rites of passage that involve hot coals or climbing, frosty mountaintops. We have college admissions, and it can be the same. So think through how you're going to provide that support. One really specific piece of advice, if I could offer it, is if you feel like you might be nagging, work with your student and set a specific day and time each week where you check in about college. Make that your college meeting time. And the whole rest of the week, use the notes app in your phone or a pad and paper and write down the other things that come into your mind. And your student will, I think, be very responsive and really appreciate that level of respect, that they're not going to feel like they could be ambushed with college questions during any given car ride or breakfast conversation. But instead, you're going to have a dedicated time where you can bring questions, concerns, ideas, maybe new mail that's come in that week, and focus some conversation about college and really do that together, where you are being that supportive parent and your student is being the driver of the process.
I appreciate that. That fits well with a scene I just had in my office where I had a mother and son, and I asked them, how often are you talking about this process? And the son said, at the very same time, mom said, not at all. And the son said, all the time. So clearly there's a misconception about where this fits and where it should be. And I think that advice about one time a week is perfect. And scribble your notes down in between, because then you can have a thoughtful, concerted conversation that's going to make a lot of sense. All right, Rob, last question. Now I've asked for advice for the parents. Now I'm asking for advice for the students. What's your thoughts for them as they embark on this journey?
Students, if you are consistently working hard, you will have amazing and appropriate college choices. And your counselors are going to ensure that, as long as you're meeting their deadlines and you are proactively, working with them and utilizing their expertise. The secret here is, now I'm going to give away a secret. There is not only one perfect college for you. Remember that A, the most selective schools are already difficult to get into, but B, that doesn't matter, because you don't necessarily need to go to one of those hyper select few to have a great college experience. So I'm not discouraging you from applying to some of those most selective colleges. In reality, the message is not don't reach, but don't focus on your reaches only. The numbers, will show that high achieving students like you apply to maybe too many reaches and unlikelies, and ignore some absolutely amazing schools that would love to have you, and they might even demonstrate that love with some scholarship money too. So your parents would appreciate that. But your counselors will help you focus in on a really appropriate and amazing list of college choices. And also keep in mind that we are representatives of offices of admission, not offices of rejection. We are on your team too, and trying to find reasons to admit you and give you the benefit of the doubt. Give us the information that'll help us do that, and you'll be even more successful than you would be otherwise. Know that this process is anxiety inducing for deans of admission like me. You may think that I hold all the power. Well, I'll tell you, in April every single year, you all know exactly where you've been admitted, and you're going to have some great options in April of your senior year. And I am going to be getting very little sleep, worrying about, did we send out too many offers of admission? Did we send out not enough offers of admission? Did we send them to the right students? So I've banked my whole career on the decisions of 18-year-olds. You can only imagine what that means every April as I get ready for some surprises that come on May 1st. And lastly, I'll just close with this line that you've probably heard before, but please take it to heart and reflect on it. Where you go to college is less important than what you do there. This is going to be an amazing 4 years of your life. Every single college and university in the United States and the ones that you might be considering abroad have endless opportunities for you. It's your job to maximize those opportunities and make the most of your college experience at a place that's great for you. And if for some reason it's something less than great, which I highly doubt, we take transfer applications at Rochester.
Great. Rob, that's a perfect way to end. Thank you for your time this evening, especially at this busy time of year. We really appreciate your expertise, and thanks for being with us.
It's always a pleasure. And I'm a big fan of the approach that you all take and the hard work that students are doing down the block at McQuaid.
Rob, I appreciate it. Say hi to all our friends at U of R. We'll see you soon.
I sure will. Thanks, John.